All right, so today we're going to focus mainly on one main issue that we're going to talk about in this section. After this, you will also have a lesson to do on the online book that has been assigned on the Dred Scott decision. So please make sure you get that done as well because it will be graded. Um, so we're basically going to be talking mainly about the Dred Scott case today. And so we're going to start talking about how violence over slavery will break out in the South. And so even before John Brown's attack, a battle over Kansas had spilled into the Senate. So not only is there a bunch of fighting over this whole slavery issue in Kansas, but there's also going to be fighting on the Senate floor in Washington, D.C. And so Charles Sumner of Massachusetts was the leading abolitionist senator. So in other words, he was like the guy that was kind of leading the charge against slavery. So he's going to make a speech denouncing slavery, and he's also going to single out and attack Andrew Butler, who's another senator from South Carolina. Now, Butler is older and not too healthy, so he wasn't there that day to defend himself. And so it looks kind of bad when you're doing that, but also Butler's nephew will show up to the Senate floor a few days later and almost beat Charles Sumner to death in front of the entire Senate with a cane. Now, this is also going to look really bad because, well, he was attacked. And so it's going to take Sumner almost 3 years to fully recover from being attacked by Butler's nephew. And so there's going to be kind of a mixed reaction to this. And so the attack will split the country even further, with half seeing the attack as savage and outrageous, and just kind of proves that slave owners are just a violent individual group of people. And while others will support the attack, saying that Sumner deserved it because he called out Andrew Butler from South Carolina. So it's basically going to kind of come down to what your real decision is. And so this attack is going to split our nation even further than it already is split with the whole thing going on out in Kansas. And all of this is due to the fact of slavery. And that's what's going to be the main dividing part of our country. Now, with Congress in an uproar, many Americans will now look to the Supreme Court to settle the slavery issue and restore peace. Now, the reason why you can look to the Supreme Court to do this is those are not elected officials. Like, they don't have to worry about being um, recalled or having to run for reelection. So their rulings can be a little bit more independent of politics than almost any other person's decision in Washington, D.C. So in 1857, the court will rule on a case involving an enslaved man named Dred Scott, and instead of bringing harmony to the nation as everybody hoped, the court's decision will further divide the North and South and create an even bigger rift between the two sections of the country. So Dred Scott had been enslaved for many years in Missouri. So Dred Scott in his story, it starts in Missouri, which is a slave state. Later, he will move with his owner to Illinois and then to the Wisconsin territory, where both places did not allow slavery. Okay, so Dred Scott starts out a slave, ends a slave too, but he's a slave in Missouri with his owner. His owner then moves to Illinois and Wisconsin, both of them, and takes Dred Scott with him, which are both free places. And after they return to Missouri, Dred Scott's owner will pass away. And at this point, Dred Scott feels that he should be allowed to leave because he had lived in these places and he feels he should actually be free. However, the owner's son and family will not let Dred Scott leave. They're saying that he is still a slave. And so anti-slavery lawyers are now going to try to help Scott file a lawsuit. A lawsuit is a legal case brought to settle dispute between people or groups. So no laws are really broken here. And so what it is Dred Scott is suing the family that owns him for his basically freedom. So this is going to start at the local district level and eventually make it all the way to the Supreme Court. Now, Scott's lawyers argued that because Dred Scott had lived in a free territory, he had become a free man, consequently, because he was in that free territory. Now, some people will agree with this, other people will not. And other people are going to say, who cares? It doesn't matter. He's been a slave, and so he will always be a slave. So, how does the Supreme Court rule on this now? In time, the case reached the Supreme Court as the title of Dred Scott v. Sanford. Sanford is the family that owned Dred Scott. The court's decision will shock and dismay Americans who oppose slavery, though. So it seems like a lot of the anti-slavery people and abolitionists thought it was pretty slam dunk of, well, he's been to all these free places, like he should be a free individual, not a slave any longer. However, the Supreme Court thought differently. First, they will rule that Scott could not file a lawsuit because he was a slave, not a citizen. And in the court's understanding of the Constitution, only citizens can file lawsuits against one another. Okay, so that's the first thing. Dred Scott is not a citizen of the United States, therefore, he cannot file a lawsuit. Also, the court's written decision clearly stated that enslaved persons were considered to be property, and the justices went on to make a sweeping decision about the larger issue of slavery in territories as well because of this case. So, two things have happened so far. Dred Scott is not a citizen, he is a slave, therefore he cannot sue. Second, the written decision says that slaves are property, not people. Third, according to the court, Congress did not have the power to outlaw slavery in any territory, and this meant that the Missouri Compromise was therefore unconstitutional. So everything that was agreed to in the Missouri Compromise was just ruled unconstitutional, and the whole law got thrown out. In other words, in the third ruling on this case, so there was three rulings that Dred Scott was not a citizen, second that he was property, and third that the Missouri Compromise is unconstitutional. Therefore, the entire law of the Missouri Compromise is now thrown out, and this is going to be huge because um, now slavery in not be outlawed anywhere in a new territory. So Congress cannot outlaw slavery in any territory. And so that's going to cause a lot more issues all of a sudden. So the Dred Scott decision meant that enslaved African Americans could not find freedom anywhere in the country of the United States now. So, in other words, if they were to use the Underground Railroad to try to escape slavery, well, they have to get all the way to Canada now to escape it. More, sorry. Moreover, together with the Fugitive Slave Act, it meant that no part of the United States could be completely free of slavery. Sorry, dry throat. So in other words, if you use the Fugitive Slave Act, which punishes white people for helping enslaved African Americans escape, on top of the fact that the court just ruled that that the Congress cannot rule slavery unconstitutional, or it's unconstitutional to basically forbid slavery in places, then technically slavery can exist anywhere in the United States now. The Democratic Party will now begin to divide over the issue of slavery, and the decision also increased support for abolition in the North. Now, the decision will split the Democratic Party, and that's only going to weaken the Democrats, but it's also going to start leading, as you will find out tomorrow, to the creation of a new political party here in the United States. In the court decision will also increase the support for basically the anti-slavery movement. Now, there's going to be several mixed reactions. White Southerners will rejoice at the Dred Scott v. Sanford decision because it meant that slavery was legal in all territories now. And they really like that idea because now they can really expand their influence. African Americans would respond angrily to the decision. In the North, many would hold public meetings to condemn the ruling, including Frederick Douglass. And white Northerners would be shocked by the ruling. Many had hoped that slavery would eventually die out, and now slavery could spread throughout the West, and there's nothing anybody can do to stop it. And this is what's going to create such a controversy leading in to Section 3, as you will find out. So, this is the end of our notes. And so, I need you guys to start doing something for me. You guys need to get caught up in your homework because it's all on Skyward now, and it's pretty clear that some of you guys aren't doing a whole lot yet. Also, if you have questions, the easiest way for me to help you would be for you guys to join my Zoom sessions, which are Monday through Friday from 11 a.m. to 12 p.m. So 11 to noon, I'm doing Zoom sessions. If you go to my teacher website on the school page, okay, under the information tab or contact information, you'll see Zoom. Every day I post a new link there for you guys to be able to join the Zoom session. You don't need to set up an appointment to do it. Just hop on. I'm there. You guys can ask any questions. I can screen share with you. You can screen share with me. It's a lot easier to communicate that way than through email. Also, we will be having a kind of an activity thing you guys are supposed to be doing after all this. on the book website, and tomorrow you will also have a quiz on the book website. So make sure you do get those things done because I will be constantly updating grades. Um, if you have any questions, please feel free to get in touch with me. Like I said, the best thing for you guys to be able to do if you really need help is to join that Zoom session, hop in, and I can help you guys out. So hopefully you have a good day and welcome back to the school week.